I want to talk for a second about the game Trepang2, but first I want to get out of the way that I love this game. This is probably one of the best shooters I've played in a long time, and it blows a lot of mainstream shooters out of the water. It's an incredible indie FPS. There's so much I love. The weapon arsenal isn't that big, but it's deep, and the customization really shakes things up. Combat's excellent, everything's punchy, the soundtrack is amazing. I cannot recommend it enough. I am prefacing the video with that because the topic might not paint Trepang2 in as good of a light as it deserves to be. Because the game's great, the gameplay is fantastic, the world building is cool, the levels have an awesome atmosphere, and the story is pretty decent. Up until the final 2 levels, and then it just kinda nosedives.
Horizon needs to pay for everything they've done. To us. And to you.
There's a twist. One that people don't really talk about. It's kind of strange. There's a twist in Trepang2 that just throws the entire game off. It comes out of nowhere. There's so little build-up, and it just hampers the enjoyment of a first-time run after it happens. You can go back and enjoy the levels afterwards, sure, but it's not quite the same, especially if you've been doing all the side missions and everything leading up to the Horizon HQ raid and what happens after that. So let's do a quick rundown. Let's talk about it. So, for start, Trepang2, great game. You're playing as a super soldier captured by the Horizon Corporation, a massive megacorp that has military and economic influence around the world. You're working with Task Force 27 to try to dismantle them and to uncover their crimes and expose them to humanity. Horizon's involved in all sorts of shady stuff, from funding terrorist organizations to experimenting on people, creating monstrosities and studying anomalies with the purported goal of advancing humanity. Right off the bat, you get the impression they're not good people, and the deeper you get into the missions, the more you realize your hunch is correct. They talk a big game about helping people and protecting them, but in the end, they do some pretty horrifying things to accomplish this goal. They have an end-of-life care facility that they basically use their patients as fodder in. They go ahead and evacuate their employees during raids, but they only give them 30 minutes to get out before they're considered targets that can be shot and killed. And they employ all sorts of questionable people as HVTs. So, when you finally confront Horizon in their HQ after getting through the main missions and potentially the side missions, you expect it to be some big climactic battle. And it is, but the tone is what really shakes things up.
106, you're not burning down an empire, you're burning down the hopes and dreams of thousands of scientists and innovators. Look around you, these aren't military targets, these are civilians. Have you ever noticed how the Syndicate is always the aggressor, always the invader? What you're committing today isn't justice, it's genocide.
There's a twist. The game suddenly treats this as a tragic thing. You shouldn't be fighting Horizon. What are you doing? Why are you fighting Horizon? Don't you know they're the innocent people here? You're the aggressor. Task Force 27's the aggressor. They're always attacking, except in those instances when Horizon was gunning down its own people, or, you know, attacking the cult. That was also, I guess, Task Force 27's fault. But more on that later. The game suddenly shifts it. Suddenly, Horizon's being victimized by Task Force 27 despite being a $1 trillion company, and the game really starts guilt-tripping you about the fact that you're fighting against them. It insists that you're the villain.
Attention all personnel, evacuate now. That's an order.
Negative, sir. We can't do that. Not until you're safe.
Horizon is finished. There's nothing to die here for. Leave while you still can.
We can't lose the greatest mind of this generation.
It was an honor working with you all.
Task Force 27 is villainous. It says that they're killing civilians even though none of it happens on screen. Even when they're passing by, civilians being rounded up by Task Force 27. You just see them being moved. You don't see them being shot or anything. The closest you get are some wrecked vehicles in the opening of the level, where I guess it's implied they fired on civilian transports, which is bad, but Horizon's list of crimes are pretty horrific in comparison to that. And when the game finally has you confront Anton Lazar, the head of Horizon, on top of the corporation's headquarters, it's given this real tragic moment when he's like, no, you're ruining everything. I trusted the Syndicate and they'll betray me. They'll betray you. You gotta stop.
6. What have they done to you? You can't do this to me. I've sacrificed everything for this!
The enemies get all defensive and protective about Anton. Suddenly all this care is shown between the Horizon employees when it wasn't there before. It's really weird. And instead of it being a cathartic moment where you take down this absolute psycho who's been treating human life like a toy to be messed with, instead the game reveals that, nope, Task Force 27 was a villainous organization. They were actually behind everything, and there is a prolonged cutscene where the entire game gets recontextualized, where the trillion-dollar multinational megacorp is the victim of aggression. Same with the absolute psychopathic cult that practices home invasions and cannibalism. No, that part is something else. But no, they are the real heroes. Task Force 27's bad because they betrayed you because the cycle. This part's tough to explain.
You're one of many cycles, 106. Each of you were created for a special purpose.
The enemy triumphs today, but our sacrifice will not be in vain. For we have planted the seed to break the cycle.
If only you knew. You can't do this to me. I've sacrificed everything for this!
Now that your purpose is fulfilled, Cycle 106 is complete.
Because the cycle isn't really well explained within the lore. So you are a super soldier made by Task Force 27, captured by Horizon, and your purpose was to clean up loose ends, former subjects used by the Syndicate or Task Force 27 for various purposes, which included Anton, it included the head of the cult, and a few others, before they decided to dispose of you, and you get into a fight with Task Force 27 and other groups associated with them, on your way to either escape the safe house or get revenge. It's strange, though, because all of this setup of Trepang2, I keep saying that name. I don't know if I'm saying it right, though. I apologize to Trepang Studios if I got it wrong. But all the intel, everything we see in-game, indicates that your initial belief about Horizon is correct. They are awful, and they do deserve to get knocked down several pegs. Like, there are moments where they could have hinted at a noble goal, but they really don't have one. There's a part where a mission set in a crash site where your director of Task Force 27 says they sabotaged several Horizon planes. They were going to be distributing weapons to warlords and terrorists and groups like that. And if you check the intel items on the crash site level, there's direct references to them arming militias and other groups, where it's like the People's Liberation group of whatever. And it basically confirms, oh wow, you guys were right, you really were funding this terror group. Or when you get to the end-of-life care facility, and you're looking into that, you find that there are walls, entire walls of people as young as 14 or 13 being put through the grinder of Horizon experiments, being turned into these shuffling monsters that can only sort of communicate and react to stuff, but there's some self-awareness going on to their plight, which is even worse. And the game just brushes this off. It completely ignores that they were experimenting on people that entrusted their lives to them, people who hadn't even reached adulthood. But it somehow just either ignores that or slides it under the floor. I don't get it. It's such a weird twist, and it really just kills the entire vibe the game's going for. It's like, I can understand if the angle is that the Syndicate founded Horizon and Anton was trying to break away from that, but there's never any indication that he was opposed to anything. There's one email where he talks about treating the patients of the Pandora Institute, the end-of-life care facility, with respect. But all the actions there indicate something completely different, with emails about complaints being shuffled out, with pre-made emails about passing on and being deceased being sent out in place of actual communications from patients, with entire rooms full of corpses left behind by experiments, with an entire basement area full of their victims of experimentation. All of that. And in the opening level, Site 14, there's also some pretty decent hints that the whole purpose behind Anton's brain transplant plan, and why he says that your character was never meant to be a weapon, is probably because he wanted to transplant his mind into your body. It could be a stretch on my part, but all the references to him wanting to find a way to transplant his mind out of his body, and his last-ditch attempt to do that, rather than to flee to somewhere in the final battle instead of holding his ground in a doomed standoff with the Syndicate, makes me wonder if his goal was to use you as a host body. But that's just conjecture. I find it really strange, especially the cult, the Jorvik Castle cult. They are somehow framed as heroic characters. The Patriarch is framed as a valiant rebel fighting against the Syndicate, when he is probably one of the more loathsome characters in it, alongside Anton. His cult is unbelievably horrid. You're getting through the castle, you fight a flesh golem composed of their victims and other Task Force 27 members coupled together. You go through their facilities, you find that they've been training for home invasions on replica houses. You find the remnants of the cult after that mission, and they're actively kidnapping people and eating them, which is like, I mean, that's fairy tale level villainy. That's like the most evil thing you could do without even trying. And the game is still at the end like, nah man, these guys, they were the heroes. You were in the wrong. You gotta set things right and take down Task Force 27.
I trusted the Syndicate. They betrayed me. You're walking in my footsteps, Six. Stop before it's too late!
At worst, Task Force 27 is traitorous. And I would agree that they're still bad for doing that, because Subject 106, your character, doesn't do anything to deserve this. But Horizon is so much worse, and the cult even more so. The bodies they've stacked up, I can't even begin to imagine.
All our volunteers are in place. It's hasty work, Anton, but this is the best we could do.
Wish I could have done more for all of you.
I'll hold you to that, brother.
And it's not like Horizon is an underdog. Everything depicted in the game shows him to be some massive global influence, and it isn't until the very last mission where you attack their headquarters that it seems like things have fallen apart, because people realize the full extent of the crimes they've been committing. All the human experimentation, the human trafficking, the illegal treatment of patients in their care, everything. I mean, that's the one time they're shown as being weak, and it's immediately used to play the victim card on you. And I don't get what the devs were going for. If they were trying to do a plot twist, if they wanted to make Horizon out to be the secret victims, they should have made it clear that all along they actually were trying to do noble stuff, and that the bad things were caused by accidents, more or less. Because that's not set up really in the story. I would say, though, that, I don't know, maybe the DLC will address this. Because everything in the missions, everything in the side missions, and everything in the intel paints Horizon as an aggressive, completely sociopathic group that just does not care at all about humanity outside of advancing its own interests.
Horizon Towers. You're covered! We are on the verge of a breakthrough in a number of sciences, and we need your help. Together, we can change the world.
And that's what's crazy to me. It's not some anti-capitalist thing for me. It's not some political themed brand. It's just looking at it from the story's continuity and me being confused and wondering, like, where did this twist come from? What motivated this? Was this just meant for shock value? Because Horizon was a good villain. I liked the way they were set up. I liked the bravado and camaraderie of Task Force 27. I thought Horizon made a very good villain faction, and I thought the Cult made a good secondary villain faction. There was no real need to shake that up. It would have worked fine. I mean, there didn't really need to be a twist, or if there was a twist, you could have just thrown in something about the subjects and being cloned and everything. But I don't know. I'm hoping that the story DLC will address this, but I'm not getting my hopes too high. I am, however, getting my hopes high for the gameplay elements of the story DLC, because it will absolutely kick ass if the main game is any indication. I repeat, I cannot recommend Trepang2 higher than I already can, because it is such a fantastic shooter for the gameplay alone. Replaying the missions, playing the combat simulator, even going into the absurd rage mode difficulty, it's still fun, and it's still so satisfying, the very diverse ways you can play it. I would highly recommend checking it out. Who cares if the twist kind of ruins the story, because the game is so good, makes up for it, and the initial build-up to the twist is actually good. The levels prior to that are enjoyable, and they work well as standalone adventures in of themselves. So that's all from me. I'm curious to see what you guys think about this. You guys have played Trepang2? What'd you think of it? And what'd you think of the whole twist around the Syndicate, Task Force 27, and Horizon? Did you think it was earned? Did you think that it had a proper build-up and everything made sense in the end?
Priority target is KIA. You've done it, 106. Horizon is finished.
That's all from me. Take care and have a great day.